correct and incorrect consciousness, mistaken and non-mistaken. So again, we're clear, hopefully, about the difference between correct and incorrect and mistaken and non-mistaken. The first, how do we distinguish correct and incorrect as to whether the main object exists or not? How do we distinguish mistaken and non-mistaken as to whether the appearing object is correct or not? The next division of mind then is into prime and non-prime consciousness. Basically this is more simple because prime and non-prime simply means the first moment. Basically it's more simple. I'm going to add a bit of complication. To start off it's more simple. And that is that prime consciousness is the first moment of a consciousness. Prime, the word prime is coming from the Tibetan word sema, on the Sanskrit word pramana, which is a very important word, or an important mind, because the importance of prime minds is that when you talk about reaching a point along the path where you're actually stopping delusions completely, in other words, when you become, when you reach the third of the five paths, the path of seeing, and you become an Arya being, it's the first time you actually start to remove delusions completely. Before that time, there's only temporary reduction in delusions. There's no removal of them. You only start to remove delusions when you reach the path of seeing and become an Arya being. And the only mind which can do that is a prime mind. The only mind that can do it is a prime mind. Now, not only that, but as you progress from the path of seeing up through the paths to Buddhahood, delusions are always removed with prime minds. And when you get to be enlightened, a Buddha or an Arya being or an Arhat, you only have prime minds. A Buddha only has prime minds. So the importance of prime minds is not just at the first moments. Let's see what is a prime mind. Let's take 5 moments of an eye consciousness looking at my cup of lovely, whichever tea it was that I chose. I can't remember now. 5 moments of your eye consciousness looking at that. You've got 5 moments, right? The first moment, how does the first moment come about? You're not looking at the cup. I'll hide the cup from you. Dum, you're looking at the cup, right? Now when you look at the cup for 5 moments, the first moment is coming about why? Because I showed you the cup. So the first moment is arising, how is it under its own power, to an extent. Not totally, but more so than the subsequent moments. Because when you first look at it, how do you, boom, the cup appears to you. And there's a certain power in that, isn't there? There's a certain force in the fact that you're first seeing. When you, in the subsequent moments, are not coming about because I've revealed it to you, they're coming about because you had the first moment. So the first moment is prime because it's coming about with the arisal of the object and the consciousness coming together. The next few moments are coming about due to the force of the first moment, not under their own power. You see what I mean? It's like the other moment, the following subsequent moments are sort of other powered. They're not fresh, they're not new, they're getting a bit stale. So because they're not new, and because they're not fresh in the first moment, they're not prime, they're not pramana, they're not powerful consciousness. Do you see what I mean? So when we're talking about a prime consciousness here, why is it so important for practice? Because it's only that one which has the power to remove delusions. The prime consciousness. Why is every moment of a Buddha's consciousness prime? So if you're talking about 5 moments of a Buddha's consciousness looking at that cup of tea, every moment is prime. So for a Buddhist consciousness, every moment is like you're seeing it new. In a sense, you can relate this to the whole concept of being mindful, can't you? What does being mindful mean? And I hate to have to go into the mindfulness has become almost becoming a dirty word these days. Mindfulness for Buddhists, isn't it? But it shouldn't be, because mindfulness is hugely important for Buddhism. This homeless once said to me, when I had a long interview with him one time, and we were all talking about all sorts of different things, and as I was leaving the interview, he just sort of pulled me back and said, remember, mindfulness is the main thing. Mindfulness is hugely important, and it's sort of sad that it's being abused. But anyway, what does mindfulness mean? It means being there in every moment, doesn't it? With an object, or with your mind, or with your things. And that's being prime in every moment, isn't it? Because if you're freshly there in every moment, you're there with the object. You're not just looking at it and continuing to look at it and becomes a bit stale and a bit. It's not that. It's there every moment to moment.
Looking at it without the mediation of generality.
Not necessarily. Yes, a prime mind is that. But
it's about all the subsequent rumination, isn't it, and all the backstory and whatever.
Yes. Well, not just that. A prime mind can be a conceptual or non-conceptual.
Right. So when I see the show with the cup, all I always get is raw sense data, but my mind then fills in the stuff with cup and afterwards, and all
that's true.
Garbage comes on.
But we talk about prime direct perception and prime inferential perception.
Right. Okay.
So we have so for example, an eye conscious looking at the cup, the first moment is a prime.
Yeah.
Subsequent moments are all subsequent, not prime. The first moment, inferentially understand. Now, inferential consciousness. Don't want to get too complicated. That's no problem. Inferential cognition. We have two types of direct prime consciousness. One is a non-conceptual one is a conceptual. Let's look at this from the point of view of the path and the way the mind goes through the stages of the path, and then it might be a bit easier to understand. How do we progress along the path? We progress along the path according to a series of mental states. And if any of you have looked at all at low rig, we look at these when we look at the traditional mind and mental factors subject, we do it from the point of view of 7 different types of minds. Out of those 7 different types of minds, 5 of them are relevant to the path. What happens along the path? If you take the position from where we are now until we're an enlightened being, or until we're a realised being, an Arya being, let's say, what do we start off with? We start off with a wrong consciousness. We start off with a wrong consciousness because we see everything as being truly existent. We see everything as being inherently ourselves and objects, and we have this wrong consciousness. That's where we are now, or at least where I am. I don't know about the rest of you, but where we are now. We've got a wrong consciousness. Now, how do we start to change that? We start to change it by hearing teachings, by reading, by studying, by hearing the fact that things don't truly exist. You know the expression in the Lamrim that as soon as you even start to hear the word emptiness or study emptiness, the walls of samsara start to crack. You know that? Have you heard that? Just hearing the word emptiness is the beginnings of the ending of samsara. What does that mean? It means that our wrong consciousness changes due to listening to teachings into doubt. So that's the first progression, from a wrong consciousness to doubt. Now doubting, what does doubting do? It's just, well, hang on, maybe things aren't inherently existent. I think they probably are, because that's how I see them all the time, but maybe they're not. And so that's, in doubt, we have 3 types of doubt, which I'm sure you've probably come across in Lamrim. 3 types of doubt. We have doubt tending away from the fact, equal doubt, and doubt tending towards the fact. 3 types of doubt. The first doubt we get is doubt tending away from the fact, which here's, you go to your first teaching, and the Lama teaches about emptiness. And you go away thinking, well, I think he's talking a load of rubbish, but maybe, maybe things don't truly exist the way they appear. That's your doubt tending away from the fact. Then you go to a few more teachings and you start, well, maybe there is something in this. And it becomes doubt, which is equal doubt. And eventually, when you've studied a bit more extensively, and you become totally convinced that although things appearing to me one way, they actually don't exist that way, then I haven't realised that, I haven't understood that yet. But my doubt is tending towards the fact. I'm pretty sure that maybe they don't exist the way they appear. So that's doubt tending towards the fact. So that's the next mind, doubt. After doubt, we get a mind which is called a correctly assuming consciousness. A correctly assuming consciousness. Now, a correctly assuming consciousness is basically more decided. You haven't realised. Oh, sorry. You haven't realised that that things are not truly existent. You haven't realised that, but you're pretty much, at least intellectually, or sure that things don't truly exist. It's a correctly assuming consciousness. It's got more power than doubt, of course, because once you've got to that point, and I suppose, that would be the point at which we at least hope to get to in this life, to the point of having a conceptually, a correctly assuming consciousness. Once you get to that point, very difficult for someone to come along and change your mind. You pretty much know, you're pretty much sure that things don't truly exist. Not totally yet. You can still, it's still possible that someone could be very skillful and talk you out of it, but basically you're pretty much convinced. Correctly assuming consciousness. Now, what comes after that? After that, you think about it again and again and again. You meditate on it. And you don't necessarily have single-pointed concentration. You just think about it, you analyse it, you study it, as we do in the monastery. We study it for 3 years, we spend on that subject. Study very deeply the study of emptiness. And they say actually that Lama Yeshe realised emptiness on the debate ground. Now, if you realise emptiness on the debate ground, you're not directly realising emptiness, are you? Because in order to have a direct realisation, what's a direct realisation of emptiness? That's a mental consciousness, and it can only happen through meditation. What Lama Yeshe would have had, if that's true, would have been what we call the next mind, which is an inferential cognition. So after a correctly assuming consciousness, the next mind that comes along is an inferential cognition. Now, an inferential cognition, a valid inferential cognition, is an extremely powerful mind. If it's something that if you got it, it would just be like an atom bomb inside your mind. It would blow you to pieces. It would just, and it does that. But it's not the final mind yet. It's very powerful because it's like conceptually you've realised the object. Now you haven't done it perfectly. Why not? Because if it's a conceptual, if it's an inferential cognition, it's conceptual. Yes. So what does that mean?
Mediated.
It's still exactly. It's still coming to you through the medium of an image.
Yeah.
You're realising emptiness, but what you're realising is not actual emptiness. It's the image of emptiness. It's a conceptual image of emptiness, but it's still hugely powerful because it's a realisation. We call it a realisation. Your first realisation of emptiness will be an inferential cognition. It won't be a direct seeing. It'll be an inferential cognition. So you can see, therefore, that valid inferential cognizer is a very important mind. It's very powerful. It's very important, and we would argue, from our traditional point of view, that in order to ever get to the point of a direct nakedly seeing emptiness without the medium of an image, which is the final mind you want, which is the mind you want that actually removes delusions, after an inferential cognition, that you have to go through an inferential cognition first. Now, other traditions would argue that you don't need to do that you can jump straight into direct perception. So Zen possibly would argue this. Possibly other Tibetan traditions would argue. I'm not sure, but they might argue this. There's no need for the inferential cognition. And this is this whole thing, again, we were talking about yesterday, where the Samya debate, whether you need conception to get to realisation. Conception is never going to do it. That we all agree upon. All Buddhist schools agree upon that. You're never going to stop delusions with conceptions. Because conceptions are always wrong. Well, not always wrong, they're always mistaken, aren't they? Conceptions are always mistaken. So they're never going to be powerful enough to stop your delusions. But what we say is that without the introduction or the leading up to direct perception of inference, you're never actually going to get to the direct one. But you need the inference to go crossover from wrong, doubt, correctly, inference, and then direct. So we would say that you need that inference. And whether you actually do need the inference or not, I don't know. But I know Choicelessness once talked about this and was I think this actually comes from the text as well, but Sanders was talking about it. And he was saying that the difference between people who claim that you don't need conceptual minds, get rid of conceptual minds, they're mistaken. There is this way of, this is very much a Zen way of saying things, and this viewpoint is very prevalent in different Buddhist circles. Conceptions are wrong. Get rid of them. You don't want to be, conceptions are what's causing you to be samsaric, and this is true. From one point of view, it's true. Of course, it's conceptions. Your delusions are conceptions. Your delusions arise because of conceptual minds. That's where it all comes from. So from one point of view, yeah, it's right to say that conceptions are wrong. But we would say that you need the conception to get to the direct understanding. And what his Holiness says was that, if I can remember correctly, it was like, he was quoting from a text, and he says that, well, someone who like a Zen practitioner, for example, I think he may even mention Zen, says that they come across the Gelugpa system of study and practice, and they say, well, look at what you're doing. You're trying to get to the top of the mountain or the top of the tree. And what you're doing is you're struggling your way up there, step at a time, one step, boom, boom, up you go, up. All these difficult, up through the path, and up through the understandings, and eventually you get to the top. But what we do in the Zen tradition is we just fly in. We're just the bird, and we just fly straight to the top. No need for all that nonsense. We just come straight in. But then His Holiness, and I'm not sure if His Holiness himself was his answer to this, or whether it was he was quoting from the text. I think he was quoting from the text. He said, but think about that more carefully. Where did the bird come from? How did the bird manage to fly? From eating things which belong to the ground. Where did the bird? Where was the bird born? Not in the air. He was born on the ground, or in a nest, or on something. How did the bird grow? How did his body grow? How did he get the ability to fly? From the ground. All the things that made the bird what it is, and made it possible for the bird to fly in and swoop in into the top there, come from the ground. So it's very easy to say, it's very nice to say, yes, you could just fly in as a bird and land on the top, but everything that you had and everything that made you able to do that comes from the ground. So in fact, it's the same thing. The reality is the same, that however much you want to say that, yeah, just fly in there, it's not possible to just fly in there. You have to base yourself on the ground. You have to come from the ground. So, from what His Holiness was saying there, it seems to make it clear that you need conceptual minds. You need to study, in other words. You need to know it conceptually before you can get your direct realization. And that's what he's probably saying.
Can I ask you just something? Because I've heard you say this before, that Lama Yeshe realised emptiness on the debate ground, but you said that you felt that it was an inferential realisation. Yeah, but why does it have to be? Because you then said because it wasn't in meditation.
It would have to be, because a direct realisation, what we call a yogic direct perception, which is what the first direct realisation of emptiness is defined as something which comes about due to the union of calm abiding and special insight.
So Lama Yeshe wouldn't have been able to hold that on the debate ground?
No, you can't be in single body concentration on the debate ground.
No, okay.
You have to be sitting in meditation and have gone into single-pointed meditation, and then think about and then bring out emptiness as your object. That would be the union of calm abiding. You can't be in calm abiding on the background now.
Right.
So it would have to be an inferential.
Yeah, I recognised it would be a very absorbed, concentrated mind, but it wouldn't be compatible.
It couldn't be calm abiding, no. And that's from a normal perspective. If you take the more sort of tantric perspective, if you like, or more that Lama Yeshe was simply emanating as an ordinary being, and that he was already a Buddha, and of course that's a different point of view, but from a normal perspective, then that would be how it would have to work. Yeah.
Okay.
So, going back to where we were here, prime and non-prime consciousness. The first moment of an inferential cognition, which is a conceptual mind, realizing emptiness, will be a prime consciousness. And that's why it's very powerful. It's incredibly powerful. It's not non-conceptual, it's not a direct realization, but it's a realization. And the first moment of it is prime. The subsequent moments are non-prime. So you can have a conceptual consciousness, in other words, an inferential cognition, which is a prime consciousness. But of course, the most perfect prime consciousness, the real pramana, the real thing that one wants to get, is the direct yoga. And that will be what we call a yogic direct perception, and that's when you've achieved the union of calm, abiding, and special insight, and you apply that, and then you get your first moment of that, which is the direct prime cognition, and that's what stops delusions. The inferential one never will. So the inferential one will transform you and blow your world apart, and you'll be an incredibly realised being, an amazing person once you've done that, but it's not going to stop delusions. You still can have delusions arising. So prime and non-prime consciousness are divided like that. Prime are the first moment, and non-prime are all following moments. Now, that again is the Sautantika point of view. I was about to give you the Pasangika one, but then I'm not sure if I've got it, if I can remember it clearly. The Pasangika one is different because it says that, I'd have to look it up. I don't want to say it because if I get it wrong, it's going to cause more confusion. I know roughly what it is, and is that from the Pasangika point of view, you see, from the Sautantika point of view, you've got the first moment of consciousness, and then the subsequent moments after that are not prime because they're not under their own power. They're coming as some. But for Pasangika, they say, well, yes, but if you think about it, the first moment of our conscious looking cup coming about due to the cup and the mind. But it's the first moment of the cup, isn't it? Which is the object of the first moment of the eye consciousness. The second moment of the eye consciousness looking at the cup, actually the object is then the second moment of the cup. So it's a new object, isn't it? So therefore, from that point of view, even the second moment becomes prime. You see what I mean? Yeah. Now, again, I'm not going to go into that in detail because I want to check it first. But from Pasangika point of view, therefore, there are a lot more prime consciousnesses than for Sautantika from that point of view. But generally the principle is the same. What do we mean by a prime consciousness? We mean a fresh, new consciousness. Seeing an object freshly or newly. And that's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it strong. And that's the sort of mind you want eventually on emptiness. And on impermanence and on everything else, because that's what will change your life. That's what will change you. Nothing else will. You know, we all experience that. You know, we're inspired. We read, we study, we meditate. We're inspired, and for a few hours or maybe even days, or in my case more like minutes, we don't get angry and we don't get, and because but then we do again because we haven't changed things. We've been infected. We're moving in the right direction, but nothing's changed. Nothing's actually altered in a way that it can't happen again. What you're aiming for, therefore, is get to the point where you've understood these things to such an extent you've got stable concentration, and you use that on the objects of emptiness and so forth, and then there's a change. You no longer get angry at all. You can't get angry anymore. So that's what prime consciousness. That's the one we're aiming for. So again, just to reiterate what we've gone through in terms of the path. We start off with a wrong consciousness. Everything truly exists. Yep, definitely does. Then you go to doubt. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You go from doubt to correctly assuming to think, no, things don't truly exist. You go from correctly assuming to having your first realization. What's your first realization? It's an inferential, conceptual realization of impermanence, emptiness, whatever it is. Then, but still you haven't actually destroyed any delusions. You haven't actually stopped anything yet. You go from that. The final one is a direct perceiver, a direct yogic perceiver, which non-conceptually realizes emptiness or whatever it may be. And that is the actual one which is going to stop delusions completely. So, and that will be a yogic direct perceiver is a prime consciousness. Again, whether a yogic direct perceiver is always a prime consciousness, from substantial point of view it's not. You can have a subsequent cognizer. So the first moment of a yogic direct perceiver is prime, but then afterwards it becomes subsequent. And again, that's a difference between, and don't worry about it too much because it would get too confusing, but that's the difference between the Sankhya and Stotantika on that as well. So prime and non-prime consciousness. Now, okay. Time to do this next one. Okay. The last division there of how we distinguish the mind, or how we look at the entity of mind, is in terms of mind and mental factors. Generally, what do we mean by mind? Mind is the main mind. We say main mind and mental factors. Main mind is, so we've got an eye consciousness looking at let's do the cup again. An eye consciousness looking at a cup. The main mind is looking at the cup. Now, mental factors are things which accompany that main mind and determine the way we see the cup. So if we're angry towards the cup, then anger will be a mental factor accompanying. You're looking at the cup with anger. Anger will be one of the mental factors accompanying. Now there's always at least 5 mental factors accompanying every mind. Because every mind has a certain degree of attention in it. There's a direction, the 5 omnipresent mental factors. Well, I won't go into, we will get confused, but there's a certain number of mental factors which accompany every mind. There's 5 omnipresent, we call them omnipresent mental factors. There's another 5 which are object determining mental factors. There's a list of 51. And the first 5 are there with all minds. The second 5 are generally said to be there with minds which realise their object. So they're not with wrong consciousnesses, but they are with correct consciousnesses. Then you've got 11 virtuous. So you've got 11 virtuous minds. You've got 6 root delusions. You've got 20 secondary delusions. Don't worry about this, it's all in books. And you've got 4 changeable factors. Does that make 51? 10, 21, 27, 47, that makes 51, doesn't it? Do you get that? 5 omnipresent factors, 5 object determining factors, 11 virtuous mental factors, 6 root delusions, 20 secondary delusions, and 4 changeable factors, 51. Yeah. According to the upper Abhidharma, according to the lower, there's 48 different denominations, same principles. The point is here, what do mental factors do? You're looking at an object, a person or an object or whatever, and you're doing it with compassion. Compassion isn't the main mind. The mind isn't compassion. The main mind is looking at a person. So you're seeing somebody who's sick or disabled or being animals being killed or something like that, and you're looking at the person. Your main object of that mind is the person, isn't it? But because the person is sick or because the animal's being killed or whatever, the way you're looking at that person is with compassion. You're feeling, wish they didn't have to suffer like that. So you're feeling compassion. Compassion is therefore a mental factor, which is influencing the way you see that object. It's determining the way you see that object. So this is why, when we're talking about, again from a practical point of view, this is why when you're dealing with delusions and wrong ways of minds, you can have antidotes. Because you can't have a virtuous mental factor and a non-virtuous factor in the same time. A mind is either affected by virtuous mental factors or non-virtuous ones, not both. Both can't be there, and that's why when you intentionally generate. So let's take an example. The antidote to anger, the direct antidote to anger is love. If you're feeling love towards a person, you can't be angry towards them at the same time. Not possible. Because one's a virtuous mental factor and the other one's a non-virtuous. So there's this list of, as we say, 6 root negative minds and 20 secondary. I always remember very well that there's a, I don't doubt whether you know him, but there's a monk called Tenzin Max. He was one of the first FBMT monks. He's still a monk. He's probably been a monk 14 years now. But he's back in Australia. He's a very dedicated, extremely dedicated monk. He was a very close friend of mine. When I first became a monk, he'd already been a monk for 10 years or whatever. And, he was like a father to me, actually. But anyway, I remember sitting next to him in a teaching. I think it might have been Tim Lecture show he was teaching, I can't remember. But anyway, we were sitting there and teaching, and this teacher, the Lama, was going through the mental factors, and he was going through the non-virtuous mental factors. So there's six group ones, and there's 20 secondaries. And all the time that the Lama was teaching these 20 things, Max was with his notebook. Sort of, what are you doing there? Well, I mean, he was taking notes, but this was a particular type of notes. What are you doing? When he finished going through the 6th root and the 20 secondary, he looked at, well, I got a full score. What about you? There's the root ones are the ones we know of from the Lamb River, don't you? What's the root? Ignorance, attachment, anger. What are the six?
Pride.
I'm afraid I would have known it once, but I can't list them now. Ignorance, anger, pride.
It's jealousy.
Jealousy is probably one, isn't it? Yeah. Attachment is one. I never got there. Ignorance, pride, jealousy, attachment, anger.
Greed. No?
One more.
Greed.
Greed is more attachment, same part of that. We'll look them up. Someone's job will be to look them up at lunchtime, because there'll be in plenty of those books. The 6 root afflictions. Anyway. Alright, so the importance then of mental factors is that actually when we're talking about delusions, well, when we're talking about, really all the aspects of the path, the main mind is in some sense irrelevant. Because you can be looking at a table or a person or emptiness, or that's just the main object. It's how you look at objects that matters, isn't it? It's whether you look at them with pride, or whether you look at them with jealousy, or whether you look at them with compassion or love. That's what matters from the path point of view. So mental factors are incredibly important from that point of view, in that they want to be developed. Mental factors are they colour, they determine the way you see something, or the way you see a mind, and therefore, like all states of mind, they can be developed, they can be grown, so your compassion can develop, your compassion can get stronger, your anger can get stronger as well, not limitlessly because it's wrong, whereas compassion isn't, but it can get stronger. So the importance in mental factors is that they colour the situation, and one wants to develop and encourage and meditate on and try and strengthen the virtuous mental factors. So therefore there's a point in knowing them, in knowing what the virtuous mental factors are. And one wants to try and remove and lessen, eventually completely remove, the negative ones. So the root delusions, the root negative minds and the secondary, 20 secondary minds are something which we try to reduce and eliminate. And really because they are the main way in which we, the way we see things, or they determine, they're the important part of the mind, aren't they? when you're dealing with negative emotions, you're trying to reduce negative emotions. That's what you want to be trying to do. You're trying to reduce your mental factors, those negative mental factors. So how do we define a mental factor in a mind? What's the difference? And it doesn't really tell you much, to be honest, with the definition here. As it says, mind is defined as that which has similarity with the mental factors that arise in its accompaniments. Mind always has mental factors accompanying it. It must. Otherwise it wouldn't see it, and it's always got. You wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't see something unless there was a mental factor of intention wanting you to see something. There's always attention. There can be intention. And then of course if it's a negative mind, it's seeing it with anger or hate or whatever. Or if it's a positive mind, it's seeing it. Mental factors always accompany. They're always accompanying. So what do we mean by main mind? This doesn't, I say the definition really doesn't tell you much. What do we mean by a main mind? It's something which is always accompanied by mental factors. That's the definition. So
that'd be one of the consciousnesses. The main mind be a consciousness. Then.
They're all consciousness, really. Main minds and mental factors are all minds.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're always defined as clear and knowing.
Yeah.
They're just different aspects of the mind, if you like.
I think in terms of the aggregates, with the main
Ah,
mind.
well, in terms of aggregates, you've got the form, leave aside form, obviously, that's nothing to do with it. Feeling is a mental factor.
Yeah.
Discrimination is a mental factor.
Yeah.
And the reason why those are listed separately in the five aggregates is because they're very important mental factors.
Yeah.
Then you've got consciousness. Everything else will come under in the consciousness. Mental factors will all come in.
In the fourth, the
compositional factors.
Yeah. But the main mind, is that the consciousness in the fifth
The
aggregate?
main mind is consciousness, yes.
Yeah.
And you're right. The mental factors will come into the compositional factors.
Yeah.
So mind is defined as that which has similarity with the mental factors that arise as its accompaniment. A mental factor, how do we define mental factors? Mental factor is defined as that which has similarity with the mind that has it as an accompaniment.
That's circular.
So basically one is one because of the other.
Yeah.
What are these similarities? They are that the mind and the mental factor which accompanies it arise at the same time. They have the same object.
Yeah.
They are of the same substance. Anyone think of the other ones? Same substance, same time, same object, same nature. Angie. Another one. Another thing. There's two things. Who wants to look at? Who's going to look up the 6 root delusions? Someone volunteer at lunchtime. Okay. Right. Who's going to look up the things that are 5 ways in which a mind is similar with its mental factors?
I'll do that.
Okay, good. We've got 3 or 4 of them, definitely. They're the same in time, they're the same in object, they're the same in substance. We need to look at the other ones. So that's what we mean by them being the same. Now, right, so what we've done there is look at the conventional nature of mind. We're going to go on to the second bit, and we're not going to do that before lunch, we're going to meditate first. But in this first level of mind, therefore, to sum up what we've done, we're looking at what do we mean by a mind. Conventionally, not ultimately, not the ultimate nature of the mind, because the ultimate nature of the mind, more than anything actually, is non-existent. If you look for a mind, you won't find it. And that's what we'll do after lunch. But
Wild goose chase after lunch.
if you look for the mind, you don't find it. And in many ways, the mind is in a sense easier than almost anything to not find. Because anything you come across, which you think is mine, isn't. But we'll look into that. But still, in order to not find the mind that you're looking for, you first of all need to know what you're looking for. So and what we've done here is say, what is a mind? What is it? What do we mean? It's non-physical. Right, first thing. First level, it's non-physical. Second level, it's clear and knowing. It's what we define as the mind. Something which is clear, and it's knowing. It has the ability to know. And it has the ability to reflect things, for things to reflect into it. That's the second level. Third level, well, we have different types of minds. We have senses, and we have conceptual minds. We have mental consciousnesses, and we have sense consciousness. We have conceptual, and we have non-conceptual. Again, the point is, familiarise yourself with all these ways of the mind is. And then when you come to look for the mind, in looking for the ultimate nature of the mind, you know what you're looking for. You're trying to find it. You're trying to find this thing which is your mind. It's this continuum, isn't it? The mind is a continuum. It's one point we haven't talked on really. Is that the mind, one moment of mind leads to another moment of mind. So it's a continuum, so that the main, what do we call it, the immediately preceding cause of a mind will always be another mind. So while we're in one lifetime, in this lifetime as a human, then each moment of mind leads to the next moment of mind. And that's on a gross and subtle level. As soon as you come to the end of this lifetime, the gross levels all go into the subtle level, and what continues is only the subtle level of mind, the very subtle mind, the clear light mind. But the point is there that there's always a continuum. There's always a continuum. There always has been a mind, and there always will be a mind. The mind doesn't disappear. There are certain Buddhist schools that say that, aren't there? There are not very many. Within the Hinayana tradition, there are certain Theravada scholars, and Theravada doesn't mean the same as Hinayana, does it? But there are certain scholars who are in the Hinayana tradition, and also in Theravada tradition, who say that our hardship, the mind finishes, it's gone, ends. There are some who say that, but most don't. And most Buddhist schools, whether it's Hinayana, Mahayana, whether it's Theravada, whether it's Tibetan, whatever it may be, most Buddhist schools agree that the mind is a continuum with no beginning and no end. It will never be an end to mind. You'll simply be an enlightened mind and unenlightened. There's an end to being an unenlightened mind. There's an end to samsaric mind, but there's no end to mind itself. So generally that's the more accepted viewpoint. All right, so we're going to, then before lunch, we're going to do meditation on the conventional level of mind. We started off this morning, so this, again, meditation on the mind, personally I've always, or most of the time I as my object of concentration, focus in single-pointed meditation. Not that my meditation is by any means single-pointed, but in that type of meditation, I've always used the mind because I find it very useful. It's very useful, and this is not just my opinion also, it's definitely backed up by texts and great lamas. The mind is a very special object to take. But you can do it in different ways. The way we did this morning was to take the mind as our object of single-pointed concentration, and you use it as the object, like you use the breath, like you use the Buddha image, or various others. You just use it as your object for single-pointed concentration. Another way, and we did this yesterday and we'll do it again now, is just to look at the mind, to become familiar with the mind. And this is what we say is choiceless, this meditation on choiceless awareness. And so we'll do that again now, just because it's a very good way of becoming familiar. It can be a way of use to gain single-pointed concentration, but it's a more of an analytical, really, meditation. It's not necessarily going to work so well for focusing, but it can do. So again, what are we trying to do? Come to that state of awareness. Be with your awareness. But rather than just being with your awareness, be also with everything that's happening to your awareness. So if you hear a sound, if you feel a sensation of your body in your body, if you have a thought going through, be with those things. Be aware of those things. Don't be involved with those things. Don't follow the thoughts. Don't follow the sounds. Don't let the sounds come into you and disturb your meditation, because that isn't what we're supposed to be doing. But just be aware of them. So in this meditation on choiceless awareness, we're staying with awareness, and we're staying with not just awareness, but everything which is happening to awareness as well. All the sounds, all the sensations, all the thoughts, all the emotions. Be with all those things. So that's what you're trying to do. Okay? Clear-ish? So let's do that. Now again, start off. It's always really useful just to start with a few minutes of breathing before you do your mind meditation. Breathing is always an important meditation to start with, just to bring the mind into calmness. So let's start, just a few minutes of breathing, and then I'll tell you when to stop to take the mind as your object. So now bring your attention onto your awareness. And this time just stay with your awareness and be with whatever is appearing or happening, be it thoughts, be it sounds, be it sensations. Just be aware of these things, but without being involved in them, without following them. Just stay in this state of choiceless awareness, where you're just aware of everything that's going on in the mind, but as a bystander, without being involved in it, as an onlooker. mind as an object of focus and taking it as an object is obviously on that level of meditation is using a more profound object than just the breath or something else, but the choiceless awareness that we just did there is a very useful meditation to just be able to bring your experience of meditation into every day, into all your activities outside meditation. Because that choiceless awareness, if you can bring that into everything else, you can be, when they talk about being in the world and not of it, it's a bit like that. You're there in situations, but you don't have to be affected by them. You don't have to be involved with them. And that makes being them much more skillful. You can act much more skillfully in that space. Okay, so one other thing with meditating on the mind in general, whether it be taking it as an object or whether doing this choiceless awareness one, it's said that you should have your eyes more open than normal. If you're concentrating on the breath or another object, then you have to keep your eyes almost closed. With mind meditation, you can actually almost have them completely open, or at least certainly more open than you would in other types of meditation.
I've found that with them open, it's sort of get the visual stimuli coming in and seems to quieten the mind somehow, because there's less the mind is occupied with the visuals rather than the perhaps less than the mental stuff.
Maybe, yeah.
In saying that, I still wandered off with the mental stuff as well.
Okay, let's talk lunch.
Okay.